Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, a Warhammer 40,000 podcast brought to you by an assortment of friends who love talking about all this silly nonsense. Not that we think it's silly nonsense, obviously I'm saying that for comedic effect. I actually take it unbelievably seriously, but maybe not so seriously as the one and only Phil. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm good, thank you.
Good times, good times. Do you like the idea of me describing you as a serious Warhammer 40,000 enthusiast?
I thought you said I wasn't taking it very seriously, or were you saying I take it more seriously than you?
I don't know, it depends. It's varying degrees. I feel like we all take it probably way more seriously than is healthy, but at the same time, I'm not really sure. If I was to sort of straw poll the idea of who takes this game and the supporting literature, lore, collecting and modelling, I'd say probably based on the fact that, you know, you're involved in a few different attributes of it. You kind of talk a lot about the Death Korps of Krieg and the associated lore. I don't know, I feel you've got a more serious vibe about it. Would you agree?
Possibly, but maybe not in terms of the gaming, because as we all know, you take it, you take the competition side of it more seriously than I do, I'd say.
Well, as someone in the comments said to us just the other day, I'm playing on easy mode, aren't I? Because I'm using the old Space Elves quite consistently. So like all the other people that pretend to be good at this game, we're all cheating because we're using the Space Elves. Fair play to those of us who aren't winning with the Space Elves. You truly are the best players of 40k, unlike me.
Well, you could have been playing on even easier mode by taking Yunari, so, you know, props to you for only taking the second easiest army out there.
Well, potentially. I think maybe the third, because it was just pure craft world as well, right? So there was no Drakari or Harlequins or Yunari, as you said. So I didn't have, like, Agents of Vec going off or any of that sort of stuff. So, you know, it's just easy mode in the sense that I've got access to ridiculous movement, ridiculous range, ridiculous power, and consistent output. I suppose that's, a pretty good combo. And I'm fairly active in every phase of the game as well, which is another, you know, winning combination. You know, I can't quite be as good as, you know, people out there winning with Imperial factions that are obviously lower tier, although to be fair, are getting better all the time. But yeah, I can't be as good as those guys in the real sense. But yeah, you know.
Yeah, so as long as you're undefeated, that's the main thing.
Presently, well, it depends. I've been defeated many times. I'm going to a tournament in a couple of weeks where I endeavour to become defeated. But I've got a fun army list plan for that, which I won't be talking about this episode because I'd like to try and keep it secret. Although, to be fair, if you go onto Brawlentine's Day on the Best Coast Pairings app, my army list is already there. So I suppose it won't shock anyone who takes the time to look to see what it is.
I like how you've said it's top secret, but then you've just signposted where people can go to take a look at it.
Well, it was top secret up until a guy won with it at Cali, which was slightly annoying. I was really excited because when the new chapter approved came out, I was like, oh, I've worked something out. I'm well clever. I bet no one else has seen this. And I looked around and I was like, oh, no one's talking about it. No one's worked it out. Oh, this is so smart. And then, yeah, I was told that a guy at Cali won with a very similar list to what I was planning to build. And it's like, great. Oh, well, there's that then. Good. But I like to state that, you know, I had the original idea before it was cool. But it's not because I take the game seriously. I just like to win because I'm feeble and insignificant without my success at Warhammer 40,000. And I'm also, let's not forget, really, really smart. And that's another reference to a comment made by someone else at some point. I think I accidentally called him Alex or so. I can't even remember now. I'd have to go way back to find out what that is. In fact, I have time because you may have noticed that me and Phil have conversed for a relatively longer period of time than we might. And that's not just because Joe's patiently waiting, not wanting to say anything or interrupt, but it is in fact that Joe is not here.
Uh-oh. Dun, dun, dun.
How will we cope without him? Phil, are you feeling confident that we can carry this without Joe?
I think the last time we did a sort of solo episode with just the two of us, we had rave reviews, most of which people were commenting saying, "Where's Joe? Bring back the Joe show." So
it is true. He is But this proves two things. One, he's incredibly unreliable, because of the 13 episodes we've done, he's managed to miss 2. Obviously, this is episode 13, so maybe it implies that it's just a genuinely unlucky number. But yeah, so he's managed to miss 1. And I don't know actually what the second point was going to be. I think really the first point summarises it perfectly. He's very unreliable, isn't he?
He's unreliable, but he's the glue to the shoe that is our podcast.
Absolutely. And our, surrounding friendship as well, really. I think if we didn't have Joe, what would we have?
Oh, I don't know. A loose array of people that would occasionally go to Warhammer World.
We'd have a Tim, I suppose. We'd have more Tim. Maybe we should have invited Tim.
In fact, Tim's really good. We should have got him on the episode.
Yeah. If we had known about this sooner, that's the other great thing about Joe, I suppose. He's unreliable, but he's also poor at communicating his unreliable nature. So had he told us, like yesterday, we could have probably arranged for Tim to be here, and he would have liked that. Tim does like to come on the show, doesn't he?
Oh, he's done it once, and he did a good job.
Exactly. Or we could have asked Sean. Although Sean would have probably wanted to talk about how he got on that Shadespire event that happened on the weekend, and goes against the grain of our 40k-ness, I guess.
Yeah, so for people listening, that was the I want to say the Shadespire Grand Clash, or I could be wrong, at Warhammer World that he took part in.
He did us proud, didn't he? He did the podcast proud, coming 130th out of 160 players.
Yeah, I mean, if he'd come top 10, we would have got him on. But until that day, Sean, it ain't happening.
If he came 11th, I would have made a great song and dance out of him, pretending that he won the whole thing, maybe. But as it is, he came 130th, and there's no way we could get away with saying that he won the thing based on that positioning. Although maybe, who knows? Who's going to sense check these things?
Who knows? I mean, I don't know if any of our listeners are Shadespire fans. I mean, I enjoyed playing Shadespire for the first, season, is it called? But the initial release. But I haven't actually played it since the second version came out, which is a shame because the models are fantastic.
No, absolutely.
But I've just got so many other different systems to play. Which we will talk about, no doubt, during the course of the podcast.
I would imagine so. But yeah, so Sean came 130-something out of 160 players. He was undefeated and won the whole thing. That's the story that we're going to spin. Well done, Sean. You're the best Shadespire player in the country.
Congrats.
With your 130th place. So you just didn't feel like winning that day. That's all it is. That's all it is. He could have done. He just felt bad for the others. But Sean is a lovely boy, and he's not someone we often actually have ever really spoken about or to during the process. So we should get him on at some point, because he's got a beautifully painted Ultramarines army and some beautifully painted Imperial Knights, and he's an incredible hobbyist. He's just not that good a player, despite being the best Shadespire player in the country.
We should definitely get him on to do a sort of hobby episode talking about painting, because I think that's his expertise.
Oh, it's really good. We need to get Joe, when he's not so sick, to post some pictures of what Sean's been working on to the peoples. We can tease his later appearance. By the way, this is another funny thing. We got approached by someone, I can't even remember the name of the dude. I chatted him on our Facebook for a bit, this is probably going to sound awful, because he'll probably look at this or listen to this. I assume he listens to us, because he asked to come on our show. We're now getting bigger YouTubers and bigger podcasters asking to appear on our show and come talk about stuff. I don't know why. I literally sort of thought to myself, I mean, we're going to get him on because we're fickle and we like the idea of becoming a bigger, more successful podcast. But it really will just be for that reason. It's like, hey, here's this guy. What are you going to talk about, dude? So that'd be good. What do you reckon about that, Phil?
Yeah, I think it will be... I mean, if anyone does want to come on as a guest speaker, I think that's a really good idea. I think it'd be nice to get people occasionally on. Obviously, we don't do this a huge amount. I mean, we do it once a fortnight, so you don't want guest speakers every episode. But once in a while, I think it would be a really good idea.
I think so as well, for the aforementioned reasons of getting, I mean, that's the thing. If you're going to ask... You got to have more subscribers than us, right? That's the goal. Bigger and better. That's the idea.
What? Because we're sellouts?
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm going for here. That's what I want. I want those YouTube monies. Not that I've actually at any point, tried to obtain them. I think that's one of the other things you see is the ongoing plight of the podcast. It's difficult to do one of these where you're not kicking the whole thing off, talking about all your different sponsorships and your Patreons and your things. I'm not saying we'll never do that ever, but I like the fact we're not doing it at the moment because I feel like that would be wrong somehow, potentially. Don't replay this clip to me in 2 years' time where I start, shilling out and asking for all the money under the sun. But right now, it doesn't seem appropriate, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we had sponsorship, I'm sure we would be selling our souls. But because that no one's knocking at the door, we can just say we're too good for them. Exactly.
That's the idea, you see. I'm trying to pretend to be high and mighty and, about the people. I'll put out the old PR message that, we'd never do that. We wouldn't do anything.
Except a few episodes ago, we were doing that because, Triple Helix was giving us something to review.
Oh, yeah. See, I wasn't expecting you to immediately call us out like that.
You can just edit all of this out, that's fine.
No, I won't. I'll keep this in. This is funny. This is the ridiculous thing. Well, you see, the thing is I felt like that was more for Joe's benefit than anyone else's. I did it for Joe. And on the topic of Joe, and Joe not being here, let me just quickly, transition now to a lovely heartfelt message from Joe explaining to you all why he's not here today to join us in the talking. And then once that's done, we'll talk about what we're going to talk about to come.
Hello everyone. I am sorry to say I am not going to be able to do this week's podcast because I am dying from what people selfishly would describe as man flu, and that I am weak and unable to work. But I'm pretty sure it's a virus. It's touch and go. But to save you all from relentless coughing fits and nose blowing and my traditional background rustling, which isn't me and no one can prove it. Yeah. So I will be with you next time for the Joe Show. You just stuck with the others this week, I'm sorry. But it's okay to have a down week, I'm sure. Alright then. Well, thank you for listening. I love you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Joe, for that heartfelt message there. I hope you all enjoyed. Interestingly, I have no idea what you said because we haven't recorded that bit yet, but I'm sure it would be incredibly insightful and lovely, as only Joe can do. So, cheers for that, buddy. So, anyway, let's talk about what's going to be happening in the show ahead of us. So, a few simple topics for this week's show. Obviously, we know a lot of different things are happening, as things always are. But at this moment in time, we really wanted to kick things off by talking about the new Custodes rules that Warhammer Community put out on their Warhammer Community channels. We're not necessarily too interested in talking about the rules specifically, although we will touch on that. It's more about what this means for the ongoing release schedule of Forge World specific rules. We just think this is super interesting because at the moment there isn't necessarily a lot of love for the Imperial forces within the Forge World range, so we're hopeful that this might represent a shift for that in the future. Wouldn't you agree, Phil?
Yeah, definitely.
There you go. We're also going to talk about the new Bolter rules. I know everyone under the sun has already done this and pretty extensively clarified and classified that it's really good for Deathwatch, but we will talk about it because it feels like we kind of have to. So we'll do that and talk about the Bolter rules. Probably won't be the longest segment in the world, but again, people probably want to know about what we think about it, so we're going to tell you. And then rounding everything out, we're going to then also talk about some of our latest projects. So me and Phil were talking about this. Joe was as well, but again, he's not here. We were talking about the fact that, we feel like we've had a really extensive focus on how we've been performing and or participating in competitive games up to this point, but we haven't really actually gone back to talk more about hobby projects and that aspect of things. And, we never really set out to make this into a competitive 40k podcast, although there's always going to be an element of that because that's a big part of how we enjoy the hobby. But we're all also collectively really invested in the painting and collecting of these miniatures. And given the fact that it is now 2019, we wanted to talk about the projects that we're really kind of setting our sights on in 2019 and what we're excited about in terms of what we've been working on presently and what we hope to be doing in the future. Sound logical, Phil?
All sounds good so far.
Wonderful. Well then, with no further ado, I will now do the ceremonial transitional noise as we begin segment 1. Thank you now. Woo! So now we're going to talk about the new Custodes rules that were made available on the Warhammer community site earlier this week, today being the 30th of January, so earlier this week being kind of Monday, Sunday time. Do you remember when these things came out, Phil? It was Monday, Sunday time.
It was one of the two. I think it was Monday. I think they sort of have a regular release schedule where previews tend to come out sort of Sunday, and then some things like rules and stuff. And specifically, it was like a new downloads section where they've moved a few things from FAQs to downloads, but also it's just a new section with a load of stuff in it. And this is one of them.
I mean, generally speaking, when it comes to this new lineup of Custodes rules and actual kind of full access to the Forge World range for the Custodes, I'm really excited to see it come along the way it has done, because one of the things that occurred in Chapter Approved 2018 was that we didn't really see an awful lot of points adjustments for some of the Forge World units, specifically within the forces of the Imperium, and we're going to get into that quite extensively in a moment. But this, I think, is actually a really nice step in the right direction for what I hope to see going forwards with the Forge World range. Now, there's not necessarily anything remarkable about these rules. I mean, obviously, people who understand and play Custodes are probably going to be quite excited about the flexibility and additional kind of tactical nuances they can add to their army. I myself am working on a Talons of the Emperor army at the moment, and I caved in and bought myself a Telemon, like 4 months ago or something like that. And when I bought that Telemon, I kind of accepted from the outset that it wasn't very good for the points that you were getting. But now that Telemon has seen a dramatic decrease in its price, I'm now really excited to see what adding this into my army is going to do. I think there's some really beautiful new additions as well that they've added to the overall thing. So again, they've got access to their grav tanks, which is just fantastic. I think adding those elements to the army list is super cool, and I think that's going to be something that will really enhance the offering. Not that they didn't have access to this already, but it's the fact that all of this stuff's been, points readjusted and balance readjusted to just deliver a much better kind of points effective, compelling argument for using these things overall. So, I mean, Phil, is there any specific thing you'd like to mention about this at this stage? I don't imagine you've actually really read it in any detail, have you?
I've glanced over it and looked at a few things, mostly because I wanted to check out the rules for the new models that they previewed, the sort of the flying winged Custodes. But there is an interesting point to be said that these are like beta rules, and White Dwarf has just come out this week. And I got it a couple of days ago because I'm a subscriber, and in that obviously is the Bolter beta rules, but there's a whole article by one of the rules writers talking about the way they can get new rules into your hands, and they sort of say historically it's basically, back in 7th edition it was literally only when a new codex came out, and now it's if a codex comes out or sort of quarterly via the big FAQ updates, or only twice a year via big FAQ, and then once a year via the chapter approved. And they were like, oh, and now there's a new way that we can get rules into your hand, and that's via White Dwarf, and that's where they introduced the beta rule for the bolters there, the bolter discipline. And then this actually is a sort of an additional fourth way, I think, if my maths is correct, an additional way where they've just gone, here you go. And it's interesting because so from what we understood is they sort of announced in terms of the order in which they were going to do Forge World rules. I'm pretty sure last year they said we're going to do a Custodes Sisters book first. Mm-hmm. And I assume that's still the case, but what they've done is, rather than just wait until that book comes out, they've gone, well, actually, let's just give you all the rules now to play, as well as allowing you to play with all the Horus Heresy models in 40k, which I think is also a big thing. But it's kind of cool that they've gone, well, here's all the rules, let us know what you think before it goes to print. And that, in a philosophy in itself, could work for absolutely every army. Like, they're obviously doing it with Sisters, not Sisters of Silence, but Sisters of Battle. And it would, I mean, I don't think they would do it for anything brand new where model ranges haven't been released. But for example, if there was to ever be a new edition of a Space Marine Codex, why not just do some beta rules first, or a beta codex, for example, to let people play test it for a few months before it goes to print. I don't think they'll necessarily do that for everything, but it's interesting they've done it for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's definitely exciting because I think, and we've talked about this quite extensively, what with obviously your love of the Death Corps of Krieg and having pretty much played those exclusively for the last 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it's been, or certainly
5 years, I think, maybe.
Yeah, and the entirety of 8th edition, right? You've been running Krieg as Krieg.
It was the tail end of 6, for which I was there for about 6 months. Then 7th and 8th, I've been doing mono-faction Krieg the whole way.
So I think for you, this potentially shows some sort of prospect or hope that we're going to be seeing, updated rules for a whole heap of new, or not new, but a whole heap of existing Imperial Armory things. Because I think, at the moment, it's fair to say that there's been a lot of things within the Imperial Armory, within the Forge World range, that I believe has been somewhat kind of removed from the competitive gaming scene by a very calculated and specific statement of intent by the Games Workshop rules writers to essentially be like, well, we've got our system and we've got our Citadel range, of which we have a certain degree of knowledge and understanding of. We don't necessarily spend enough time, or we hadn't spent enough time on the entire Forge World range, so let's just make them, absurdly expensive to run in-game, and then effectively afford ourselves some time to evaluate and assess and understand what these need to be in-game. Because I think, to me, it can't be a mistake that a lot of the really cool Forge World tanks and flyers and, all these Imperium units that you used to see much more frequently in the older editions of 40k have left the competitive meta because they're no longer viable because of exorbitant points prices. What's your take on that, Phil? What do you think? Do you think that we might now be approaching a return to form for the Forge World range within competitive or even just normal 40k?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what Forge World did last year, just like as a business, like it didn't release much in the way of many new models, especially for 40k. It obviously has got its Horus Heresy range. If I remember rightly, there was no Horus Heresy book last year. Obviously, Alan Bly died, who's like their lead writer. So obviously that was really tragic. Fires of Syraxis, which was their... Actually, no, maybe he died maybe it was 2 years ago now.
It was 2 years ago, yeah.
Because it was basically just as 8th edition was coming out, I believe, when that happened. Fires of Syraxis, which was a 40k campaign book, was meant to be coming out, again, pre-8th edition. That was Adeptus Mechanicus, and it was meant to bring all the Adeptus Mechanicus range to 40k, and I believe against Tau. But I could be mistaken. And obviously then 8th edition came out, and it had, from what I gather, it had taken the Forge World team by surprise because no one had told them. So they had to completely can that campaign book, and it seemed like it had it's just been put on permanent hiatus. Whether it ever comes back, I don't know. It would be a shame if it, was mostly finished and then didn't get released. But basically it meant the Forge World team had to obviously do the indexes and create all of those rules at very short notice. And obviously I presume at this stage the Forge World models were not play tested in the same way as the Games Workshop rules writers were play testing theirs, because obviously there's an internal play testing structure and then there's an external sort of team of playtesters, and now I don't know how and when they were set up. I presume that was set up before 8th edition came out, so 8th edition was relatively playtested in terms of indexes. Maybe that was wrong, maybe it happened after the indexes were written but before the codexes came out. I definitely get the impression that was the case at the very least. And maybe Forge Worlds didn't kind of get on that bandwagon, and there's only, if I remember rightly from looking at the team of the team of Forge World that was at the Warhammer Fest last year, there's literally like 2 40k rules writers, or just 2 rules writers in general, because a lot of the Forge World team is sort of the specialist game department now. And then there's like a dedicated Horus Heresy team, and there's a tiny team for 40k. I've been thinking for the last year that Games Workshop should just amalgamate the rules writing into their department, into the Games Workshop division, because they've got a much larger team to sort of deal with it, and that Forge World should just be a model making company on its own, and then obviously Specialist Games and Horus Heresy could still be within that section. But the 40k stuff I'd personally rather see as part of the Games Workshop team, because they've got the output to create, they've got the output to sort of guarantee that it's all going to be at the same standard and the same level. And you look at things like Vigilus, like we talked about in the last episode, like all the Vigilus detachments, while great, are incompatible with the majority of Forge World units, because they just exclude them. They're not designed with Forge World in mind, because they are 2 separate companies, and the Forge World team writes for Forge World rules and the Games Workshop team writes for Games Workshop rules, and there's no crossover. And that's actually, as a Forge World fan, that's actually quite frustrating, because, and it was the same with formations in 7th edition, all these amazing formations came out, but I couldn't use a single one because they weren't compatible with my Krieg army, because they weren't written for them. And Forge World didn't ever write formations. So, and that was my worry with the Vigilus book, and to an extent it's true, because there's only a few keywords that are compatible with both sort of things. So to sort of summarise my feelings on it, I do hope something happens. I think you're right in terms of that it seems like the Forge World units did really well based on the index in tournaments. So you saw a lot of the Basilisk platforms, or the Earthshaker platforms, which are models that don't exist anymore. So loads of people in America were just proxying them with third-party stuff. There was
I'm
a
sure
couple
loads of people in all countries were proxying them, though, right? It can't have just been the Americans.
Well, they're the ones I noticed, like the big tournament scenes, but I'm sure it was done everywhere. They're the sort of cross-shaped, legged platforms that can shoot even when they're in close combat, because they're sort of automated and they don't degrade in profile, and they were basically all round better and like 20 or 30 points cheaper than both the carriage and the sort of GW Basilisk version. So people were just spamming them. And there were no models for them either. So it's not like Forge World was benefiting from sales. And I mean, to some extent, it's nice that they've done rules for stuff that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I sort of would still like to see that supported, but I doubt we will going forwards. But at the very least, that everything needs to be balanced. And I think there was such a fuss about Forge World units being in the tournament scene. It's always had a negative sort of connotations, like, Forge World units, it's pay to play, you're spending money to win, even though you could say that about any expensive Games Workshop item.
You can say it about any item from GW. I mean, the Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 hobby is pay to win, regardless of, the context of what company you're buying it from, Forge World or Games Workshop. It's like, at the end of the day, there are units that are exponentially better than other units, therefore those cost a sum of money. Now, sometimes those units are relatively cheap or more expensive than like-for-like units, but ultimately, because of the nature of you just pick what you want, well, of course, the best stuff's there, and if the best stuff's from Forge World, then fair enough. I think historically the problem's been with Forge World, or at least when I got into playing events and tournaments and all the rest of it, the historical issue with Forge World was the inconsistency of their release schedule, I suppose. So your point about them being amalgamated into the Games Workshop rules writing team release schedule kind of makes sense, because I always sort of found, like, back in the day I went to an event and this guy's like, I'm using these melter gun Razorbacks or heavy flamer Razorbacks or some kind of variant of, like, tank, which was a super cheap Razorback by the standards of the day, because it's from a book that was in print 4 years prior to 5th edition even coming out, but then it was still enough of a rule set that they could have let it carry on, and it was, there was so much mad stuff that used to be in the mix, because, even things like when you talk about Forge World never doing formations, in the Doom of Malalalala, or whatever it was called, the Elder book.
Malantai, I want to say, but I'm not sure if that's correct.
Yeah, whatever it was. It had the really cool Wraith Knight on the cover with the... it was the Phantom Titan, wasn't it? The big Elder Titan. But, yeah, that book featured formations, obviously for the Elder. Because, even in Forge
was that 7th edition formations?
7th edition formations, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think, was that one of the last ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few, because one of the last 7th edition, the Krieg one, which was Siege of Rax, it didn't have formations, but it had special detachments, which is very similar to what we get now, and not quite in the specialist detachment ways that you've got in the current edition, but in the sort of just general detachment types like Vanguard, Spearhead and stuff. It was a specific loadout, so instead of having to take troops, I could take some fast attack units, and if I took, say, for example, Rough Riders in this detachment, because it was a Death Rider detachment, I would then unlock a whole bunch of special bonuses just for those units. And I actually really loved that idea and thought that was much more interesting and sort of much fairer than the formations. Because it still constrained you to build things within detachments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I sort of wish the Games Workshop had adopted that instead of formations.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other topic, isn't it, really, in terms of things they could have done to make army list building slightly better or whatever. But anyway, long story short, I think it's interesting as well that you talk about the capacity of Games Workshop's rules writing team. I think what's happened over the last year and a half in 8th edition, or the last year, since Chapter Approved 2017 came along and basically went, that Zench Greater Demon that we all lovingly call Big Bird became unplayable, Titans became unplayable, certain types of tanks became unplayable because they just went, it's a big Titan, 2,000 points, and it's like, it's nowhere near as good as 2,000 points would imply. Yeah, but, we just don't want you to play it in competitive events. Was kind
but
of
the Titans Yeah, the Titans are definitely given arbitrary sort of fixed values, like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, or whatever. And like I said, I think they've definitely gone, let's just get rid of these so they're not in matched play.
Yeah, well, it's even like if you go back to the old 7th edition rules for the Khorne Lord of Skulls, where they went Khorne Lord of Skulls, 888 points, even though the Lord of Skulls wasn't actually much better than an Imperial Knight that was like 350 back in the day. And it was like, well, hang on a second here, I can get 2 Imperial Knights and change for the same cost as a Lord of Skulls. And a Lord of Skulls is only marginally better than 1 Imperial Knight. 2 Imperial Knights will do it over. And it's like, what is this? But it was more like, yeah, but isn't it cool that it costs 888 points? That's so Khorne. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess. You know, doesn't really sort of tick the boxes, I suppose. But no, I'm interested because your point about like the rules writing team. My impression of the rules writing team is that as heavily resourced as they maybe are versus Forge World, I still get the impression that they're quite under-resourced comparatively, and I always sort of feel like, you know, they're really working hard to churn this stuff out. And I kind of feel like, as I say, that's the knock-on effect of the Forge World stuff is literally like, well, just get rid of that. We'll worry about it in 2 years' time or a year's time when we've actually got headspace to think about how that's actually going to fit in. I don't know. That maybe that's me being very, very sort of judgmental, but I think it's the easiest way of explaining that scenario.
Yeah, I don't know if that was deliberately their mindset for things other than, say, Titans. Because I think when it came to the Titans, they were like, yep, these should not be in a 2,000-point tournament. So let's just make them a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
And then we don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
Other stuff, though, like, it was a bit weird because, so the first chapter approved, which was 2017, came out, and a bunch of my Krieg stuff went up in price, and they were also just, you know, the generic guard stuff. So your Rapier Laser Destroyer, which is a one-shot sort of super las cannon, went up to like 80, 90 points once you factored in the crew. And you're like, for something that hits on a 4-up, that is pointless. Like the Avenger fighter was kind of good, and I think it came around to like 115 points, but then went up like 20 odd points. And the Cyclops, which was probably the most, I think that was 40 points, but then went to 60 points. And that was the one you saw the most at tournaments. And it's like, it's only, I found the Cyclops is really hit and miss. They basically, you know, you blow them up. They're like a remote control bomb. And it's like, once you've played someone if you play someone who's never come up against them, they're pretty cool. And if you've got enough terrain, you can sort of slowly sneak them around and you might be able to blow them up. Or you hold them in your deployment zone as a sort of anti-alpha strike deterrent. Then they're pretty good. But if you play someone that's played them against them before, they'll just shoot at them first turn and get rid of them. And then they'll probably do you some damage if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And I've always found them like 50-50. Some games, absolutely amazing. Other games, it was literally a waste of, let's say, over 120 points if I'm taking all 3 of them, because that's how many I've got. So they can be a complete waste.
Well, it'd be 180 now, wouldn't it, for 3 of them?
Well, exactly. So I thought if they went up to 50 points, I was like, fair enough. If they went up to 60, though, I'm like, geez, that's too much. But I think the thing is that you've got to factor in, like, so people were taking them as an Legion detachment where you can deep strike them, which makes them, and because at the beginning you could deep strike turn 1, that made them a lot better. And it's like, so I'm being penalised because someone can run them as a different detachment and they're all spamming that one. And that's where we get into the conversation of, you know, certain regimental bonuses greatly outfavour others for certain units, and there's no points cost multiplier to do with that because the regiment bonuses are just arbitrary and they're not balanced, and there's sort of like no intention of balancing them, at least in a match play scenario. So all of that went up in price, and the majority of the Krieg army in terms of just units are already more expensive. So a guardsman is, I want to say 5. Yeah, guardsman's 5 points instead of 4 points, and he has a +1 weapon skill, his regimentability is he doesn't take casualties in the shooting phase when you're taking your morale, and you have Kraken frag grenades. So your weapon skill and your Kraken frag grenades are that 1 point extra because your regimental bonus is the morale issue. And I'm like, but they lose the best orders that you can possibly get, which is first rank fire, second rank fire, and I think there's one other that's pretty good. But when you compare sort of the nuance of the codex orders, and this is the thing, like when it came to the index, it was like, yeah, they were okay because they had a special rule, and regular guardsmen didn't have a special rule because regimental rules didn't exist in the indexes. But as soon as the codex came out, all the sort of Forge World stuff became a bit pants. So grinding advance got better, where you could shoot twice for Lehman Russes. But some Lehman Russ chassis tanks, so such as the laser destroyer, which has the big gun in the middle, that suddenly went from being sort of the best potential anti-tank Lehman Russ that you could have to being nowhere near as good, because it went from, it does D3 shots, and it's like an Annihilator used to do 2 shots on the turret, but now the Annihilator does 4 shots. So would you take something that does D3 shots or does 4 shots? It's like, you'll take the one that does 4 shots. So the Codex Imperial Guard just got instantly better. The Index Guard stuff stayed the same and then just got more expensive.
I mean, as I say, the context of where we're at is somewhat now understood, I guess. I guess what's important to really sort of emphasise, and while we're even talking about this, and, you know, obviously kind of introduced it as the topic of this Custodes rule set, is about what this represents and what that could mean for the Krieg, for the Elysians, for the other Imperial forces, the Imperial Knights, the the other kind of Space Marine units that are only available via Forge World, where that's going to go and how that's going to progress and improve. Because, you know, whether or not some of these situations for the Custodes are infinitely better than what they used to be, or they're more or less the same, or they're slightly less powerful, whatever it may be, I think the points readjustments to me, based on what I've seen, looks quite healthy. Now, there's still some stuff in there that I look at and go, ooh, it's pretty pricey. I mean, you know, I'm not entirely sure whether I'll be falling over myself to take their Grav Carrier, for example, but, you know, for 225 points, you're getting a toughness 8, 18 wounds, free up armor save vehicle that has a movement characteristic of 14 inches, ballistic skill 2+, and isn't armed with particularly bad weapons, and can carry up to 6 Custodes infantry models. So, you know, you start looking at this stuff and you think about what that represents, and don't, you know, again, it depends on, and I'll need to familiarise myself with the rules for taking a Battleforged Custodes army, but this thing also has a 5+ invulnerable save because of its flare shields. Does that become a 4+ because of the Custodes thing? I don't know. I need to acquaint myself again with how that works. But, you know, even a 5-up invuln is still solid for this thing at 225. So, you know, I mean, again, this represents a nice new option that maybe, well, I know was, you know, more expensive before. Same thing with the Telemon. I mean, I've heard people say the Telemon's weapons have taken a bit of a hit and that it's not quite as impressive as it was before, but it's still, you know, a pretty impressive Leviathan style dreadnought that's going to cost you about 280-ish points, which before it was bordering on 450. So, you know, the fact that you can get this thing for between, I don't know, 250, 280 is a really positive change for the army. And I think what I'm excited about is, are we going to see something like this very soon for the Krieg, for the Elysians, for the Red Scorpions, for all these guys that have Forge World models? Are we now getting to a point that actually over the next 3 months, all of a sudden, so much of the stuff that you've had to leave on the shelf is going to have a new lease of life, because all of a sudden you're going to go, oh my god, my such and such Bombard is now I don't know, whatever a realistic price point should be for that. And finally, I can use all these cool models that I've just had to shelve because they're useless. I can start using my Cyclopses or whatever. What were they called again? The
Cyclopses.
And I think that's what I think. I think we're at that point now that I just love to see that stuff sort of coming back. I mean, I suppose the only other sort of rumour's been doing the rounds, or not really rumour, but, you know, after Chapter Approved 2018, some of the Elder units from Forge World got point adjusted, some of the Necron stuff, some of the Orc stuff got point adjusted, but the Imperium stuff basically didn't get touched as far as I can tell. Obviously, this is a starting point, but do we think, off the back of this, that we're going to be seeing a brand new 40k Imperium book very soon? Not just the Talons of the Emperor, but actually for the Imperial Armory?
Oh, I'd hope so. In terms of the points cost for the Guardsmen, the only stuff that I noticed that changed was the equipment that matched the equipment changes that they sort of made for the Codex points costs. So a lot of generic equipment went down in price, and like weapons and war gear. So hotshot las guns became 0 points, for example. So that affected, my Krieg models, but nothing else really changed. So yeah, what I've noticed is in Chapter Approved, if they don't mention anything, if nothing changes, it normally means something's in the pipeline. So it's like none of the points changed for Knights, for example, because the Knights Codex was being written as this was being done. So it's like the Knights Codex hadn't been out enough for them to go, oh, actually, we do need to adjust these points. So at some point, we're probably getting the big FAQ points changes for, some of the bigger Knights that are like really competitive, for example. And I think, what we will see, or what I hope we'll see, is either a guard book, like a sort of campaign style book for Krieg, maybe, or a generic sort of what they used to do, the armor books, the Imperial armor books, which was got everything in sort of all the generic Forge World units, and they just release that, and it'll be, here's the new rules, because a lot of it do need new rules, and here's the new points costs. I think that would be really good to see. And it sort of feels like last year, as kind of went off on a long rant tangent, last year they didn't really do much Forge World in terms of 40k stuff. So it'd be really nice to see this year a book coming out to support their model range, because otherwise it must be affecting their sales. Why would you buy a Forge World unit if it performs absolutely rubbish on the army, on the battlefield? Obviously, people will buy it just because it looks cool, or they want to add it to their army, or they just want to play narrative and they don't really care how competitive it is. But if it must be affecting their sales if the model doesn't do as well as it could do on the battlefield.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, at the end of the day, the better you make the rules for a model, the more you sell of them. I remember listening to the tale of the day that Dreadnoughts got better from an independent, like, Games Workshop stockist, and all of a sudden the demand for Dreadnoughts within his customer base went up quite exponentially. He was talking to the sales rep from Games Workshop back in the day, and I mean, this was sort of in the dark ages of Games Workshop. The age of enlightenment hadn't quite kind of come their way, or whatever it was, because ultimately they were still kind of, we are the best at making toy soldiers, or sorry, no, they're not toy soldiers, we're the best at making models, and it's all about models. And the guy apparently spoke to his sales guy and was like, oh, I'm getting a lot of demand for Dreadnoughts, can I get some more Dreadnoughts in? Because the rules are really good for them. And apparently the sales rep was like, oh no, it's not because the rules got better for them, it's because we wrote an article about them in White Dwarf, and obviously that's what's having the positive impact on the Dreadnoughts. And apparently the guy's like, no, it's because the points, because you adjusted the points and made them better. That's why everyone who's bought it has said that's why they bought it. And they're like, no, it's because we wrote an article in White Dwarf. Go away now.
I thought you were going to be recounting us the tale where you spoke to the rules writer for the Elder Codex on 7th edition, and you said to him, "What was up with the Wraith Knight?" Because obviously at that point it was ridiculously cheap for how powerful it was. And he was like, "Oh, I wrote that. It was really fair and really balanced, and it had a decent sort of points cost to it." And then someone came along and told him to not almost make it half the points. So I'm sure it was just make it cheaper. So that sort of the points cost of that seemed like it was quite an arbitrary one for 7th edition.
Oh man, I think they just, again, I don't want to sort of presume to know, but I feel like they just sort of gave up by 7th edition. They're just like, we know this is busted, just go for the sales, right? It's an 80 quid kit, there's a lot of profit to be made, sell them by the pound. Like, come on, get them done. But yeah, no, it was... it was crazy, man. Crazy times. But anyway, I feel like that pretty adequately covers that topic, unless you have any final thoughts, Phil?
Just that what I'd like to see is some of the Sisters. I think Sisters and Admech for Forge World, from the Horus Heresy Forge World, coming across to 40k. I mean, because the Admech range is huge as well, so it'd be great to see that come to 40k.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be interesting if they kind of spun it to be more the kind of, maybe even spinning it as a dark Mechanicum force, potentially. Because a lot of the kind of ideology and, technology inside of some of the more archaic or, 30k Horus Heresy Mechanicum range or Mechanicus. Which one am I supposed to say for Heresy? Is it Mechanicus?
Yeah, it's Adeptus Mechanicus now, isn't it? So is it Adeptus Mechanicum back then? Maybe it's Adeptus Mechanicum.
I can't remember. But nonetheless, whichever one it is, because a lot of their stuff's a little bit more wibbly, I don't know. Maybe they could sort of spin it that they're more in line with the dark, whatever they are, Mechanicus.
I would actually assume it'd be the other way around, and that the dark Mechanicus now in 40k, because they're so much more, because they're like warp tainted, they'd be a bit more crazy, because that's where you get things like the hell forges, hell brutes. So I imagine Dark Mechanicum will be a lot more sort of organic and sort of tendrily than the sort of standard Mechanicum stuff of the Horus Heresy. I mean that's my assumption. That would be my guess.
Not knowing enough to know, I think the whole kind of Imperial Mandate, or whatever it was, the Imperial Truth or the Emperor's Decree, was about how you can't just have AI, you always have to have a human component. So I would imagine the Dark Imperium would go more Terminator robot style. And by Terminator I mean the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
You mean full-on AI?
Yeah, more more sort of... Yeah, we're done with all this human stuff. Now we're just robots. So maybe more like whatever that... what was the name they gave to the guy in...
Men of Iron?
Men of Iron, yeah, something like that maybe. But anyway, who knows? This is all mad speculation. But the point is, you're right. There's a lot of really cool stuff within the Forge World range that I'd like to see better supported, and I'd like to see back on the tabletop in any kind of way. Obviously done in a sensible, balanced way. And hopefully Games Workshop's rules writing team can kind of, focus on delivering really cool rules for models that aren't just from the Citadel range. Because as you also highlighted, obviously Games Workshop and Forge World, as much as they are the same company, they're not. In fact, I don't really even begin to comprehend the nuanced differences between the two businesses. But it wouldn't surprise me if a Games Workshop rules writer was seemingly incentivized to make rules for Forge World a bit bad because they're more interested in selling Citadel miniatures than they are selling Forge World miniatures. But I don't know. I mean, again, internal politics within companies is mad, and Games Workshop is probably no different in that respect. So who knows what the motivations are that drive them. The point is I just want to see cool minis being used in cool ways in games, because there's some beautiful models within the Forge World range that are not getting the love and attention they deserve because their rules are just bonk, and we just need to, move away from that and get them to a better place, competitively speaking, or just gaming wise. And I think this Custodes stuff is a step in the right direction. So I'm excited in that regard, and that's why we talked about it for however long this segment was. So with no further ado, I will do the transitional noise and progress to wherever we find ourselves next.
And we're back, and we're going to be talking about the Bolter Discipline Beta Rule that was previewed on the Warhammer community site and is now out this week in the White Dwarf magazine. So it's now live and in the wild, so to speak.
Sorry, Phil, are you to say that they've made some new Bolter rules? I have heard nothing about that. No one has mentioned it anywhere.
What? That's crazy.
I know. Obviously, everyone's spoken about it, and now we are. Aren't we clever?
Yeah, let's just follow on that bandwagon. For those of people that haven't maybe heard about them, the updates to the Adeptus Astartes and Heretical Astartes keyword, I want to say, basically Chaos Space Marines and regular Space Marines, but not Custodes, just for standard Space Marines.
Not Custodes, not Imperial Guardsmen with bolters, not Sisters of Silence with bolters.
No.
Not Adeptus Sororitas, whatever they're called, Sisters of Battles. None of them.
No,
just
none of
Space
those.
Marines.
Just Space Marines, basically. Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines.
So
it basically replaces the rapid fire rule. So you can now shoot twice if the following criteria has been met. And by saying fire twice, replace your rapid fire rule. So effectively, you're rapid firing at maximum range instead of your half range. So the three rules are, one of them's the original rule, which is if you're under half range. The other one is if you're a Marine or Chaos Marine and you've stood still. And then the last one is if you're a vehicle, bike, or Terminator.
Or Centurion.
Yep, that's it. You can move and still shoot at your maximum, rapid fire at your maximum range, basically.
I mean, it's alright, isn't it? I think is the general takeaway from it. Most people seem to think it's okay. I've had a lot of instances where I've listened to people talking about it where they've gotten certain rules wrong. So, like the other day, I was listening to a podcast where they were saying, "Oh, it's really good because if you use them with the Indominus Crusade, there's that thing where you auto hit with your bolters for 1 CP, so you can do this at max range auto hitting." But you can't do that because that rule only affects the auto bolt rifle variant, which is an assault weapon. So you can't do it on anything that's an assault weapon or anything that's a heavy weapon. So again,
so they specifically call that. They basically say it affects all bolters with the rapid fire rule, and then they name check a lot of them, and they name check a bunch of unique stuff like the Gauntlets of Ultramar, I think. If I'm not mistaken, and a couple of other like special ones and basically say these are the ones that are bolters that rapid fire that count. But obviously things like heavy bolters do not. So the real winner, I think everyone said, is storm bolters because they do 2 shots, and when they rapid fire they do 4 shots. So that makes them really good.
And as I understand it, the Deathwatch variant is the bestest within the Imperial ones.
But it always has been, right? Because of a specialist ammunition.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously this is all gravy for the Deathwatch players out there because they've had their moment in the sun now. I think because towards the end of the 2017 season, if you will, chapter approved 2017. I mean, not the year 2017 because that was a while ago, but throughout 2018, Deathwatch were pretty universally panned for being useless. But now as the meta kind of transforms to more horde-based things, having stuff like this with your Deathwatch is going to get super good, which is great for them.
Well, especially since the horde meta is predominantly Xenos horde as well. I mean, obviously you do still get the Nurgle Plague Bearers, which are probably the exception to that, but I guess, what other Xenos hordes are there? I mean, it's mostly going to be Orcs, isn't it?
Orcs, yeah, predominantly.
I mean, Tyranids aren't particularly the top meta, but if you are going to run Tyranids, you're probably doing it in a horde capacity.
Genestealer cults are going to get quite a good buff with the horde stuff, so big units of Genestealers are definitely going to be on the menu. What's really interesting as well is that I don't think Deathwatch have any rules that affect Genestealer Cult. So they've got rules for, or rather they've got stratagems that affect a Tyranid army. But I can't recall anything that specifically targets Genestealer Cult, which is hilarious. So
I do wonder, as we were talking about in the last section, about how rules are being updated, whether with the release of Genestealer Cult, they maybe would like FAQ the Deathwatch Codex just to add a few keywords in if they haven't already. But it seems odd because when they wrote Deathwatch, Genestealer Cult were a thing already. So they should have really factored that in, knowing about them, unless it's a deliberate omission, maybe.
Well, I don't know, because when they first kind of reintroduced the idea of Deathwatch being their own codex in 7th edition, they released it in Deathwatch Overkill, didn't they? Which was Deathwatch versus Genestealer Cult,
yeah.
Which heavily implies that Deathwatch are really good at dealing with Genestealer Cults. In fact, it's one of the things they're designed to deal with. But for some reason, no one saw fit to put a rule in the codex that depicts that. They just went Tyranids, and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm saying that with a relative level of authority. I'm basing that off of a conversation I had with Joe the other day. So, again, if I'm wrong about that, I haven't checked what Joe told me. So.
Oh, well, we all know what he's like, and I know he's not here to defend himself. But if he said he's read a codex and it's not in there, that almost guarantees that it is in there, and he's just not read it himself.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. But regardless, Deathwatch did well, so well done them. On the Chaos Space Marine side of things, I first got excited because I went, oh, I could use this with Emperor's Children. I bet no one's thought of that. And then you realise that the Emperor's Children's sonic weapons aren't bolt weapons, they're all assault weapons, and so on and so forth. So it's like, okay, can't use them. So obviously the Thousand Suns have gotten good. There's some Death Guard stuff that you can do with their Terminators, which has gotten a little better. But broadly speaking, the stars of the show when it comes to this is the Deathwatch. The only other thing I was considering is the new Indominus Crusade detachment for Space Marines. So
Crimson Fists, especially?
Well, I was thinking you can take 10-man veteran intercessor squads, and they do have the stratagem for 1 CP to increase the rapid fire shots of their bolt rifles to 2. So you could be doing 40 shots at 30-inch range with a unit of intercessors. Yeah. Also, as well, I think the intercessors for Deathwatch have gotten better as well, because you can use the 36-inch range shot at -2. So I think there's value in that as well. So rather than...
I was going to say, because one of the main tactics, if you are running Deathwatch, I believe, is just to use a stratagem to deep strike them down. And those units don't actually benefit from this new buff, because when you deep strike, you count as moving, and when you deep strike, you can move within sort of rapid fire range anyway, can't you? Because you'd be, between 9 and 12 inches would be rapid fire. So it doesn't affect those units. It would affect things like Terminators that could just deep strike down low and then just... but again, you could potentially be within a rapid fire range. Unless you want to drop down at max range with your Terminators and charge something else, maybe.
I don't think... this is the thing, right? This is a slight improvement to Terminators, but Terminators are still awful. So it doesn't matter. It's that thing where it's like... The Terminator still lacks in so many other areas. The fact that it can shoot 4 shots at 24-inch range is a nice addition, but it's not going to account for enough of an uplift to make them worthwhile. I have to admit, when I first read this rule, I thought it meant you get the double-double, so you could have a unit of Deathwatch, or not Deathwatch, sorry, Deathwing Terminators deep strike down, and then they'd shoot 8 shots each. And then I was like, oh, you can deep strike them down, and then you shoot 120 shots at one unit, and then another 120 shots at another with the stratagem or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, that's going to be amazing. And you could take...
Well, that would be so amazing. It would be broken.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, oh, and then you could take the Dark Talon, and that's got 2 Hurricane Bolters on it. And, think of all the... it'd be amazing. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, it's just a normal rapid fire rule. Whatever. It's okay. I mean, genuinely, it's okay. It's fine. I think at the end of the day, it's a nice little buff that Space Marines needed, but it's not changing the fact that Space Marines, especially Terminators, are not very good in the first place. Centurions, yeah, okay, maybe somehow this gives some viability to the Centurion Devastator squad again, because you get a few more shots out of them, but I don't think it's really going to feel significant. Vehicles, yeah, great. I mean, but most of the time, whatever. Yeah, it's all right. I genuinely cannot see this massively influencing the outcome of too many games, unless, of course, people are running backline Deathwatch Primaris Marines just shooting, 20 shots at 36-inch range. I think that's probably the best way to do it, is just to have static areas where you just go, cool, there's a 10-man unit of Deathwatch Intercessors, there's another, and they're just going to stand still and, shoot at you from a distance, and, that could be viable in some way, shape or form, but then it gets really boring because you just got this static force to utilise things. So I don't know, I think, like I say, it's alright. That's about all I have to say. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, it's good. The sky's not falling in. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
If I come up against a Space Marine player, I'll be like, okay, cool. Like, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to make me panic any more than I would normally be panicking.
I think the only other thing that you have to kind of be specific with in this scenario is you now need to just think about the options that you're presenting to a Space Marine player when you play against them, because ultimately if you move within 24 inches of them in your turn and don't do a significant amount of damage to the unit that is at that 24-30 inch range from you, depending on what type of unit it is, you can stand to suffer a greater deal of damage in response. So you just have to be more mindful of movement. You have to ensure that whatever you're putting within range is going to do significant damage or delete the thing that can fire back at you, which is the general rule of thumb anyway. It's just the fact is that this has become more vital because, all of a sudden, if you're within 24 inches, you're no longer getting 10 shots, you're getting 20 against you. So you do have to be mindful of that, and that will have an impact, but not so much so that it matters. And again, you can make calculated risks based on this sort of stuff as well, because if someone's going to be running backline Space Marines, they've got to accept the fact that they've got to remain stationary in order to exchange with that many shots, and then if they're going to move or not. So you can be like, well, you stay where you are and you might do more damage to me, but you stay where you are and you don't contest this objective. If you don't contest this objective for too long, I'm going to win overall anyway, because that's just how it goes.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it feels like a decent trade-off that hopefully gives a buff to Space Marine players that they need. And again, it's a beta rule that sort of implies that, it's nice that they've acknowledged that Space Marines aren't doing so well competitively, and here's a quick fix for you, so you don't have to wait 3 months before the next big FAQ. And it'll be interesting to see if in Chapter Approved this will become official, or if there be another Space Marine Codex which has a whole raft of changes in, and this will be just one of them. But again, that's sort of a different conversation entirely. It's good, I think, and I'd like to see this more for other factions. And in the White Dwarf magazine, this is exactly what they say. We can now, almost in every month, but they haven't done it in the... I mean, they've done it in this one for the Space Marines, but there isn't anything else. It'd be interesting to see the following month what they'd be doing, because the previous issue was the Crimson Fist, so the assumption is that every month there's going to be something for someone, and that's exciting for people that haven't had their codex has been out for over a year now, for example. So Space Marines have had one, maybe Guard will get one next, maybe Chaos will get an update if it's not in Vigilus. So that's a good sign, I think, that everyone can get some love without having to wait for an actual release to come out.
No, absolutely. But don't, for the love of God, give this ability to Tau. The minute Tau get this, oof, that's going to be awful. Like, the minute Tau start firing 2 pulse laser shots or pulse rifle shots at 30-inch range.
Well, I think they would know not to, because I think, like you said, the trade-off is Space Marines aren't really a static army, and that they want to be on the move if you're playing them correctly. And if you're playing them aggressively is the way to do it. So the trade-off is, yeah, you can stand still and shoot twice, but you don't really want to be doing that, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Whereas Tau, if you gave them that, they'd be like, great, I'm not going to move, because why would I do that anyway?
Yeah, no,
that's their style of army.
I'm looking forward to Richie maybe running his Thousand Suns again after this rules come into effect.
No, that's true.
That's the only thing I'm looking forward to. I haven't seen Richie run that Thousand Suns army for a good long while, and he's got some beautifully painted miniatures in that collection. So, yeah, that's really the only thing that I kind of am interested in off the back of this this rules change. Is kind of cool to start seeing Thousand Suns maybe come back in some way, shape, or form. Because obviously they're the Deathwatch of Chaos Space Marines, right? Or at least they've got the better bolters within Chaos Space Marines. So, you know, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Black Legion units as well, right? I mean, if all of a sudden, you know, Abaddon has a, you know, rapid fire free strength 5 -2 storm bolter in Terminator armor, for example, you start to go, oh, hello. That's quite terrifying all of a sudden with these rules in effect. So, you know, there could be some interesting nuances for the Black Legion when they come to pass. But, yeah, it's all right. Like I say, it's okay right now. Nothing's terrifying me at the minute. But, you know, I say that now and I'll play against someone and they'll wipe me off the table with their ridiculous long-range rapid-fire madness. But, you know, at this moment in time, I can't foresee anything too terrifying coming out of this. But it's good to see. It's a good rule. It's all right. There you go. That's my closing thought on the thing.
Good.
There you go. Shall we do a transitional noise, Phil? You introduced the topic, so I feel like it's only fair that you do one.
Oh, I can't do the noises. It's always you.
What? When did this become the rule?
It always is.
I think you're forcing this upon me. But all right, for the people, let's go on. Woo. So now, to close out episode 13 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast, we're going to talk about some of the projects we've been working on, because, as I said in the introduction, we've been talking a lot about kind of the competitive elements of the game, what we've been doing in tournaments, what we've been working on in the way of army lists, and, you know, we feel like we've probably overly saturated the content with that up to this point, and me and Phil both felt like it might be cool just to talk about some projects we've been working on, more the hobby side of the hobby. So with no further ado, Phil, what have you been working on at the moment?
Well, this is an interesting story. So I started off at the beginning of the year. I wrote out my, I think was it #hobby 2019 resolution that was going around Instagram, where you could just lay out what you want to do for the year. And the top 3 things that I put was, one of them was paint my Tyrannid army up. I started several years ago and only got as far as painting up 1 unit. So I was like, paint more of those. Finish painting my traitor guard for kill team, and try and paint less of. Oh no, and also my knights that I started up last year, and to paint less Krieg. And loads of people were like, oh, you're going to paint less Krieg, and I was like, yes, because the army's almost complete, and I'd much rather do something new. And in the last episode, we talked about No Retreat 8 and how I hadn't got an invite for it. So I was like, so what I can do is this year I'll do my Tyrannid army, and then next year I can get into No Retreat with my Tyrannid army. And then the very next day after we did that podcast, guess what came in the post?
A letter telling you that you owed the bank so much in back payments.
Well, that as well. But also the No Retreat invites. Huzzah!
Oh my god! I know someone who's going to No Retreat. He must be so cool.
I am so cool indeed. So that means I'm once again taking my Krieg army back to no retreat. Because even though I sort of in my application was predominantly my Krieg army, I was like, here's some Tyranid stuff I'm working on. But I was also like, but probably I realistically won't get it done. So just concentrate on the Krieg army.
Exactly.
And because of that, I've sort of then readjusted my focus, because I was looking through the rules of the event pack in terms of what I can take, because I want to add something to my army, and obviously I've got my knights which I could add in, but they're a very mono-faction specific tournaments, because it's less about being a competitive tournament, more about narrative and just having a good looking army and being friendly and nice to people. So you can take, if I'm taking Astra Militarum, which will be my Krieg, I could take a assassin detachment as an extra, or an Inquisition detachment as an extra, or a Knight detachment as an extra. And I was like, I've got Knights, so I could bring a Knight, I guess. And then I was like, or I could do an Inquisition army. And I recently saw the movie, this is a very long tangent, I'm afraid to get around to it, but I recently saw the movie The Favourite, and there's an excellent scene in this, and it's basically sort of, it's during the reign of Queen Anne, so it's sort of Tudor-esque, if you can imagine. And there's a scene in it where one of the ladies, who's the she's sort of like got the ear of the Queen, and she basically cuts her eye or cuts her face in some way, and she basically wraps it up with a sort of lace bandage to give herself an eye patch. And I was like, that would make a cool model. And then I realised I could actually make that model because of Yvraine is in a fancy dress. So I'm basically decided I'm doing an Inquisitor army, or detachment to be more correct, with a female Inquisitor that's going to be converted up from Yvraine, from the Yunari.
How much of your brain are you going to keep intact? Is it literally her bottom half?
It's going to be her. No, it's going to be a lot of her. So the head I'm taking out, and I'm going to use one of the Stormcast Eternal upgrades, which is why I bought it initially. So I've got the right head that I'm going to use for her, and then I'm going to have to green stuff effectively a sort of like a lace bandage going across her face. For the body, I'm going to keep the same, although I've got to do something with the kind of the corset, because, and on her body you've got all these the Wraithbone bands I've got to sort of take off, so it doesn't look like she's so she could have like a skin suit underneath her corset, or I just paint it bare flesh. I'm not too sure yet. And then the dress is going to be relatively the same, but I want to get rid of the little straps with all the soul gems on her, so I want to get rid of that, so it's a lot less detailed and a bit more sort of more simplistic and dark, and I'll paint her wearing a black dress. And then I've got a pistol, which I've got from a guy on, it was either Instagram or Facebook, because I did a sort of shout out for a few different parts. So it's the pistol that comes with the what they called the chicken leg walkers for the Admech armies. The dragoons. The dragoon riders. Yeah. So he has like it's sort of like a Wild West style pistol. So she's going to be shooting that in one hand and then holding either a sword or a staff in the other hand. So my plan is that I'm going to run her as Eisenhorn. So I've got to match the rules for Eisenhorn. So Eisenhorn has Barbarossator, which is a sword, and then he's got his rune staff and his book, which can summon Cherubiel. And when the renegade militia army on Forge World went to Last Chance, I picked up a few bits. One of them was the priest with the speakers, because I wanted to use that as a priest model. But I also got the rogue psychers, one of which has got sort of his arm sort of stretched out as if he's summoning some great power. Because I always thought that would make a great demon prince. Sorry, not demon prince, demon host, to go with my Eisenhorn model. So even though I have the Eisenhorn model from Black Library, I decided I'm just going to convert up a sort of my own version of Eisenhorn, because I think that'd be a much more fun project to do. So my current plan is to use her as Eisenhorn, I'm going to use that that rogue psyker as the base model of Cherubael, but then I'm going to use the swirling part of the avatar, the Yunari avatar that comes in that triumvirate box to have him sort of flying up in the air, because that'll make him look really big and super cool for a demon host. And I've got a bunch of like chain and stuff that I'm going to have dangling down off of him. And I recently got through one of Joe's mates the Inquisitor game rulebook, so I've been looking through that for inspiration on demon hosts and Inquisitors. So it's been really interesting. And I've got a few other things I can add to the army. So I made for my Admech army a Sisters of Silence squad with the standard Admech helmets. So I did a sort of head swap on those to act as they were going to be the personal shield maidens to my knightly princeps. But for now, I'm going to run them as the bodyguards for my Inquisitor. So I can basically have a 5-man or woman squad of Crusaders, along with Eisenhorn Lady. And then I've got the Arvus Lighter I picked up last year as well. Even though it is completely rubbish for its points, because it is worse in every way than a Valkyrie and is pretty much the exact same points as a Valkyrie. I was like, this would make a really cool sort of requisitioned vehicle for my Inquisitor. I can put 12 people in it. So I was like, I could have, let's say, I think her name's going to be Lady Eleanor Greyhorn as my Inquisitor. So she's going to go with the 5 Guardians, Crusaders. Then I also last year made a model which was a combination of the Mordor Goblins, the Underhive, the Undertown. I can't quite remember the name of it. It was from the Lord of the Rings Hobbit.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of them either. The grey goblins that you got in the starter box set that was based off King What's His Face and. So I made a model last year where I did a head swap with a skull and turned it into like a servo skull on top, and I cut the model's arms off and I replaced the arms with chainsaws and chain swords, and I added on some pistons, so he's a bit more automata. So the idea is it's a servo assassin that is programmed by basically there's a keyhole in the skull that I've modelled, and there's a key mounted to his back. So the idea is you can unlock the top of his skull and lift it up and sort of set your program for how you want the assassin to operate, and then you can lock him back away and sort of send him on his way. So I can run him as an acolyte, and I've got enough bits. Hopefully in the post going to get a few more chainswords, so I can make a few more. So potentially 5 Crusaders, 5 acolytes, just all wielding chainswords, and then I guess for their pistol weapon, I might take the needle pistol, and I could somehow represent that in the model somehow. With Lady Eleanor Greyhorn plus the priest as well, because the priest will give +1 attacks to Astra Militarum, which makes the Crusaders instantly better. And then the acolytes actually work as ablate wounds for any Inquisitor. So I think it's a 2-up. Any wounds that go onto her can go onto an acolyte instead. So that will give me a kind of cool close combat-y unit for my Krieg army that can zip around in an Arvus Lighter and land on objectives, do lots of hopefully close combat damage, can summon Cherubael as well, which will make it a bit more interesting. And ultimately, even though it's not competitive, it gives my army suddenly a really interesting theme, which I've been wanting to do for ages. It gives me a chance to do a really cool conversion project, which I've been wanting to do for ages. And as we were talking about beforehand, the problem with Krieg is you can't really convert them up that well, because they're all kind of like monopose and they're all resin.
The grey coats means there's no flexibility, you can't turn people around or twist their bodies around at all. So this gives me a chance to have a lot more fun with making models, and actually that's one of the things I enjoy doing the most. So that's my big project for this year, I think, or for a good few months at least.
On the topic of the Inquisitor itself, have you not considered using the torso from the new female rogue trader from the Kill Team set?
Yes, and actually this was one of the... I'm not going to do that because someone else has done it. So there's a bunch of fantastic people on Instagram that are involved in the Inc. 28 sort of community, which is basically playing the Inquisitor game in 28mm scale instead of the original 54mm or 56mm scale. So if you look at hashtag Inc28 on Instagram, there's loads of people that are involved in that. And there was a guy who did just that. He basically did a torso swap with Yvraine with the piece from the female rogue trader, which sort of was one of the reasons which inspired me to use that model, because it made me go, oh yeah, I could use that model, but actually I want to do something different from just that. It's like, because weirdly watching The Favourite really inspired me with this concept of, she could be a cool, because in the movie she shoots a pistol as well. They do like duck hunting at one point, which sort of also made me go, oh yeah, I could have her walking forwards and she could be shooting with one hand and holding a weapon in the other hand. I think my only difficulty is I've got to sort of represent Eisenhorn, so it's, do I have her holding a staff or holding a sword, or do I sort of have to muck around and have her having a sword on a scabbard sort of, and then have to green stuff all of that onto her? Makes her model a bit more fussy, maybe, I don't know.
It's interesting because when you look at the Rogue Trader model, she's basically got the fundamental elements of the Eisenhorn arsenal anyway, right? She's got a scroll mounted to her waist. She's got a walking stick type thing that you could very easily change out for a power sword, or potentially use as his force staff, or whatever it is that he gets that is the staff that he wears over his back, at least on the model. She's holstering some sort of las pistol, I guess, which probably wouldn't be...
Yeah, I think it's called like an heirloom pistol, and that's the sort of thing that I want to represent anyway, that kind of vintage antique gun as opposed to the bolt pistol.
I mean, essentially, she does everything you needed to do from the outset. You just got to glue a power sword to her somehow, and then you're pretty much there. But I understand the desire to do something more custom and more specific to your own needs. So,
well, it's this thing of also, you not roped me into, but we're doing the grand tournament again for 2019, Heat 2 this time. So I was like, I want to not necessarily take, again, if I could take something that adds a competitive element to my army, great, but that's on my focus. But if I could have a really cool showpiece, like showcase items and units in my army that's going to be draw the eye, has a better chance of me like winning a painting competition or getting nominated for best army. Like, I would much rather do that. And I think these elements will do that. These units will allow me to enter into the character, competition, because normally I just go for the vehicle because they're the only ones that are of any interest. The Venner Field Marshal model isn't that interesting to put. I mean, you can paint it up and it'll look great, but in comparison to some amazing Space Marine, you've got no chance. So I can do this amazing Inquisitor model that someone can look at and go, oh wow, that's like really well converted. I can see what he's done, and hopefully I'll paint it to a decent standard as well.
No, I mean, that sounds fair enough, man. I always used to love the idea, and I know we've had this conversation many times, but the idea of you adding like a really awesome Imperial Knight to your force, just because the idea that I've always loved is the idea that you'd have this pristine Imperial Knight, like maybe with like some ornate yellow colour scheme or something really garish, and the idea of him trudging through the mud with the Kriegsmen and having all of his feet covered in like, brown, horrible muck that he's kind of built up from, walking around with the Krieg, but obviously from, like, the knees upwards, it's just beautiful, pristine, like, straight off the showroom floor style colour scheme, and then, the idea of him having these really muddy boots, as it were, I just sort of thought that'd be quite an interesting thing to sort of draw the eye, the idea of all these
I think that still can happen. So, assuming I get my Inquisition stuff done, ideally done first and out of the way, and there's still time, like I think the ideal army for the GT heat would be a Krieg detachment, an Inquisition detachment, and a Knight detachment, because then I can run my big Valiants as my big boy model. I've got my kind of close combat-y inquisitorial unit to go out and grab objectives, and then I've got the mainstay of my army, which will be whatever points left I can spend on Krieg and Lehman Russes and what have you. So for the GT, that would be the ideal list, because then I sort of tick every box.
Yeah.
But I think the fun focus and the thing that I'm sort of obsessed about at the moment is Inquisition, and it's something I've been thinking about for ages, because I've always wanted to do some Inq 28 conversions and have an excuse to do that. So now I can, but still tie it in with my 40k hobby aspects as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. So yeah, no, cool. Well, I mean, on my side of things, it's pretty modest by comparison. I've kicked off the year, obviously, with a few tournaments in front of me, so I'm still very focused on doing my absolute best at those. So right now I'm focusing on building up my Elder army to be as, competitive as I can make it. So I've been spending an awful lot of time trying to crack the code of what I want to do next. I'm still adamant that I don't want to do Ynnari because, for one, I've made a big point about the fact that I'm not super into them, although, as I always say, I reserve the right to change my mind. But as it stands at the moment, I think I've come to a place where I've come up with an army list that satisfies all of my own weird requirements while still being very strong. So looking forward to seeing how an aspect of that performs at the Brawl and Time event in a couple of weeks, which you're going to be coming to as well, aren't you, Phil?
Have you got me a ticket?
Let's just say I have, for the sake of argument. I haven't done it yet,
yes.
But
I'll be coming. I actually need to look at the event pack to work out what I can take, but it'll be Krieg and of some description. I think I'll just use it as an excuse to test out the I want to say the Spearhead detachment, but it's not. It's the Emperor's Fist tank company from Vigilus. I'll probably just run that for the fun of it to see how it performs. And see if I can kill something with mortal wound spam by charging some tanks in.
That's always a good plan. But yeah, that's the initial concern. I've got a number of projects that I'm really keen to actually get into. So I started this year by building all of the Custodes for my Custodes army. Or rather my Talons of the Emperor army. So littered around me as I talk to you now. There are sprues of Sisters of Silence that need to be assembled alongside a couple last Custodes that I'm building up into the Talons of the Emperor army, and that's intended to be, a really cool, fluffy army. I've seen some people who've done some really effective and really kind of, strong colour schemes for that stuff while still kind of producing it quite quickly. One of the good things about Custodes as a range is that paint just sort of falls on them and they look fantastic as long as you respect a certain level of technique within them. So they won't be the greatest painted things I've ever produced, but I'm really excited to see how that all comes together and to start trying to run those in more fun, friendly games with you guys and, start to sort of do that kind of thing, which would be cool. I'm also bizarrely working on a number of Ultramarine lists, which is very strange because I've never had any kind of desire to run the Ultramarines, and as time's gone on, I took an interest in Roberta Gilliman, I've picked up that model. I now have all three versions, or not, rather all three versions, because there's technically four, if you include the original Rogue Trader one. But I now have the three available options for Warhammer 40,000 8th edition of Marnius Calgar. So I've got him in his Artificer armor, in his Terminator armor, and I did yield and pick up his Primaris variant because I really wanted those Victrix Guard. So I've already assembled all of them. I doubt I'll use Primaris Marnius Calgar because I don't necessarily think he's as good as Terminator Marnius Calgar, but it's cool to have options. I'm working on an army that's actually using the old school Space Marines, so not Primaris Space Marines, but actually old proper Space Marines.
Are you running them as Ultramarines? Because I knew at one point you had Crimson Fist a while ago, but then you also started your own custom chapter as well.
Yeah, so the intent is to run them as my custom chapter in colour scheme, but then obviously to import characters into them. So I've just recently paint stripped my old Azrael model, which has been painted up in the Azrael Dark Angels colour scheme. So I've paint stripped him in preparation for painting him again in this generic colour scheme that I've got. So as it stands, I have pretty much all the characters for the Dark Angels. I own all the Blood Angels characters. I own all the Ultramarine characters, minus the Scout Sergeant and the Tank Commander. But I have all the other ones. So I have Chaplain Cassius, Grand Master Librarian Tigerius. I've got all the free Marnius Calgar variants. Who else am I missing in that lineup? I feel like there's one more that I can't remember. Oh, the Captain. Oh, what's his name? Do you remember?
I'm afraid I don't.
No, he's got a sword. Oh, he's the first captain. He's well cool. Sicarius, maybe? Who knows? I could just look it up, but I'm not going to because it's funnier that I forget these things. But yeah, so there's that, and then I've got some Space Wolf stuff. So it's that thing where it's like, well, I've gotten to this point where I've tried starting collecting most variants of Space Marine armies at different points. And I've gotten to that point with it where I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I've collected an assortment of blue Space Marines, and an assortment of red Space Marines, and an assortment of green Space Marines. Why am I doing this? Why don't I just have a generic colour scheme?
Surely you should be doing the Rainbow Space Marines, and then you can incorporate them all.
Well, I mean, it depends whether you're using the proper Rainbow Marine colour scheme, or if you're using a Rainbow Marine colour scheme, because Rainbow Marines are a kind of dark blue with a few stripes of colour on the kind of centre of their helmet, right?
Oh, I can't quite remember.
Yeah, they're like dark blue, and then their shoulder pad is like got like almost like a raven's claw type look to it. But anyway, we digress massively. The point is, I've come up with my nice custom colour scheme, which is somewhere between Red Scorpions and probably a Heresy Imperial Fist colour scheme. So it's like grey armour with a yellow arm and black trim. So I think that's very closely related to there is a Imperial Fist Heresy colour scheme that's very close to it. But that's become like my generic colour scheme for Space Marines now. So the intent is to work on that this year. I'd love to, just sort of make some progress with the hobby side of the hobby beyond the tournament side of it, because I don't know, man. It's just I said it in the last podcast, and it was funny because Joe was talking to a guy called Matt that runs is like the chair. He's not the chairman. He's like the treasurer for a club in Durrington, and we were talking about obviously that I'm trying to do these less competitive army lists to get back to having fun playing games with you guys. But then I submitted my army list for an event we're doing in April because he's madly included the obscure rules from Cities of Death. So he's got a legit 40k tournament, whereas if a model's obscured, it's an additional -1, and I'm like,
Wow.
well, okay, cool. So I'm just going to take all these elder things that are going to be like -3 to hit, and he's like, oh, I thought Dan wasn't going to be doing all the competitive stuff, and it's like, well, I am if I'm going to a tournament, but in my general kind of day-to-day life.
Is it a tournament, or is it like a narrative tournament or a casual tournament?
That is a very good question. It's a tournament, you know. It's proper try hard.
Hard as nails. Okay, fair enough.
Well, I mean, it's a tournament. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, if you're gonna put something in there like that, it has to be highlighted for being silly, doesn't it?
I think this is an interesting thing. I think the onus of tournament players and their argument is it's my job to break the rules so the rules writers can fix it. Which is sort of, if you just look at, you know, how the big FAQs and stuff work, that's what it's all about. It's about, you know, matched play is what drives the rules changes. No one's making, and this is sort of a bit of a downside, you know, the rules team are making cool new rules for narrative play with it beyond, you know, some new missions and chapter approved. All the beta rules are all to do with match play because people like yourself go and abuse them to the max to win a tournament.
Well, there's that thing where he was talking it through, and I was just like, well, you know, if you're going to include it, I'm going to use it, and already Elder have enough buffs as it is, so I'm taking I'm thinking for that I'm building up my Hornets at the moment, and I'm going to probably use the Shuriken Cannon variant of the Hornets, because if you advance a Hornet with vectored engines, it's -2 to hit, then -1 for being LL Toc, and then it's obscured, so they could just be -4, just normal. So like, okay, cool, I'll do that. That's hilarious.
Ouch. Well, hopefully someone will come with a Hellhound spam army, and then they'll sort you out.
Oh yeah, potentially. Look, I mean, I'm not. At the end of the day, if people are smart and potentially listen to this, they might work out a way that breaks that stuff or build something to counter that. But yeah, when you think that a Ranger unit is -1 normally, then you put them on a building which gives them 3+ save when in cover. Then also they get the additional -1 for being LL Toc, and then they get the additional -1 for being obscured. They're -3 constantly, these Ranger squads. So it's like, cool, I just do that. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to shoot him with this Guardsman squad. Great, go for it. You can't hit him. Oh, okay. I'm going to shoot him with these Space Marines with all their rapid fire bolters. Like, cool, go for it.
Yeah,
they're
they just
-3.
need to make the minus to hit rule only apply once. So no matter how many different buffs from however many different sources, you won't ever get one -1.
I can't disagree with you. But at the same time, yeah. But anyway, what I was saying was, I said that, and I meant it, that in casual, normal play, I would like to stop running armies that are super, super horrible, because I think it's not particularly great for us as a friend group when playing games together, because it's not engaging, is it? It's not like, oh, great. I mean, don't get me wrong, when one of you guys is like, oh, I've come up with something that I think is really strong, can I play test it against you? So like when Richie's Elysian army beat the snot out of my GT Heat 3 army.
Your GT winning heats army as well.
Yeah, and Richie's army absolutely kicked the tar out of it, and I'm happy to admit that, in the sense that it's like, yeah, he did it perfect. Like 2 vultures, a bunch of Elysians with plasma guns, and a load of Imperial Knights. Kicks the snot out of loads of scatterbikes and Dark Reapers and all the stuff I took, because it just drops in and shoots it in the face before it can do anything in response. And, you know, it was super clever what he came up with there, and it worked well. But, you know, other than when people want to try that type of gaming, I mean, you know, let's shout out my buddy Andy. He asked me to come play him in the Salisbury store, which was a fair old journey for me, but nonetheless I was like, yeah, sure, I'll play with my tournament army, and we played a game. Admittedly, I ended up taking an Imperial Soup army rather than my Elder army, because I just recently purchased Joe's Imperial Knights, and also had the Leviathan Dreadnought for the Blood Angels that I really wanted to run, so I took that. And yeah, you know, it was a pretty comprehensive. Andy's entire army was dead before the end of turn 2, I believe. It was pretty rough for him, but at the same time, that's what he asked for. So in those instances, fine. that's what I'll turn up with. But I think, you know, when you and I are playing, when me and Tim are playing, you know, Tim hasn't got to the point yet where he's got a super competitive list. So when he comes around for a game, it's like, oh, hang on, I haven't really built anything for this. That's still a bit horrible, and I don't really want to play against that. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is actually have armies and games that are fun again. Because, yeah, it's been too tournament-y for the last 2 years. I need to scale back. I need to calm down.
Yeah, I think definitely more narrative games. Did you get the City? No, I wouldn't say Cities of Death, but it's not the Urban Conquest campaign box.
I am holding off on that because if I buy it, I also want to buy the city board to go with it. And it's a bit, I don't know, 260 quid is quite a bit for that, or whatever it works out to in total. So I'm sort of on the fence about it because I wouldn't want to get that without getting all the other terrain to actually make it work.
Makes sense, yeah.
Obviously, you can just buy mats. I'm kind of looking at that as well at the moment. I think, you know, the hobby stuff for me is like thinking about what we're doing with this channel as well. Or I say channel, but doing this podcast, whether we want to do some more battle reports or whether we want to do more, you know, stuff. I don't know. It's that thing, innit? It's sort of trying to work out what works best. I think that's truthfully really what should be my hobby focus, getting to the root of it, is painting up my scenery, fixing up my garage to be a little bit more, you know, video friendly when we're filming battle reports. Those of you who've watched our battle reports will know it's a pretty horrible space that we're operating within there. Not that that's drastically different from other people's garages, it's just that most people who do this better than we do take the time to drape it and make it look a little bit more presentable on film, which is not something we've done. And, you know, when you look at the table, everything's still grey. I haven't fully, like, painted or flocked everything. Everything just sort of looked a bit rubbish. So, yeah, that should probably be more of a focus than anything else, is actually getting to a point where I can create a gaming space that we can use for gaming collectively in a cool and awesome kind of way. So that could probably be my revised focus. Maybe if I have a New Year's resolution, it is that before the year is over, I will have a full assortment of painted terrain and or boards that we can all play on and take photos on and actually be like, look how cool this looks, as opposed to, ugh, it's a bit ropey, but...
Well, that's the thing, because we've all got reasonably well-painted armies, and it's great when we go to Warhammer World because the scenery is fantastic and it's all nicely painted and we can all take great photos. But with the exception of that, there's not many other times where we can go somewhere and the terrain is to that standard. So if your garage is sort of fixed up a little bit and the terrain's just to a decent standard, it doesn't need to be amazingly well painted. But yeah, that'll be great. Just even if we're not doing anything with it, I mean, we don't have to be recording battle reports or anything like that, but even if we're just taking photos for our own personal enjoyment, that would be really nice.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, this is the relative negative the closer you get to London, though, right? I mean, the fact that I even have a garage is a relative privilege in that sense, in as much as... yeah, I need to... I'm constantly thinking about where I move to next and how that's going to influence like gaming spaces and things of that nature. Wherever I move next, whatever house I go to next, I've got this weird sort of like, you know, aspiration that whatever it is has to have a more functional space that I can use for gaming rather than the garage. Because the garage is fine, but it's freezing in the winter, boiling in the summer, and only necessarily in the perfect peak conditions somewhere in March and October. Those are peak gaming times for us. When it gets to March, ooh, it's okay, and in October it's okay, but the minute you get into winter, like, you know, I went out there the other day and in the freezing cold conditions we've got at the moment, it's just horrible. It's like you can't play games in that, even when I've got like 3 heaters on the go. It's a garage. It's, you know, it's not insulated in the right way. It's not done in the right way, so it's not ideal. So yeah, that's the thing. Wherever I go in the future, I'd quite like to have somewhere in the house that's properly conditioned for being what I need it to be. So that's an aspiration. But I think beyond that, yeah, working on the table and working on the conditions by which we play within, because I appreciate that my home has become the spiritual home of all of us in the sense of our gaming. Whenever we get together to play games, we tend to do it here because this is where, we have the
Well,
best
you've
space.
just got the space,
Yeah.
basically. And at one point you were in the middle for everyone, but now you're not quite.
I've let us all down. It's your fault, Phil, for moving to where you moved to, which I won't mention for the sake of not mentioning these things. But it's your fault.
that secret place.
That secret place. No one can work out
anyone
where
that
you
knows
live.
me will know where I am. Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But no one needs to hear that here. If they want to do some digging, hang out outside your front door, come and give you a kiss. I'm sure they could. But maybe
I'm sure more than welcome. I mean, I would love to do more hobbying with sort of people I know online, not necessarily like other YouTubers, although that would be lovely if the invite was thrown my way. But just people I sort of regularly chat to or interact with on like my Instagram or Facebook. There's one guy who I think he won one of my competitions that I did last year and got one of my spare copies of White Dwarf, and he's doing a Deathwatch kill team at the moment, and it looks really good. And I was like, once I finished my Renegade kill team, it would be great to, meet up somewhere, even though we live in different parts of the country, and like get a game. Like, I'd love to do more of that sort of stuff as well. Like, get to play other people other than just you and Joe and Richard. As much as I love playing with you guys, and I'd like to play more with you guys as well.
absolutely, man. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's all good stuff. But yeah, project-wise, like I say, I'm just... It flips and changes. I've got a few tournament things I need to fulfill. I want to get to the point where I have all the options within my Elder army that gives me the flexibility for this season, because I think this season's somewhat kind of defined now for Elder. We're not going to get a huge amount of new stuff, so I know pretty much what I think is going to be good for my army. So I've bought all of that, and I've built all of that, and I've undercoated all of that, and I'm building and painting it as we speak, or not building, but painting it. Not as we speak now. I'm not doing the Joe of rustling around stuff as I do this, but... The point is that things are being done on that, and I'm hopeful that given the fact that the GT finals are in March, that sort of chapter of the year will be concluded, and I'll have an army list that I'm happy with, and then, I don't need to worry about the GT Heat 2 for 2019 in August, because I'll just use what I used at the finals in March, more or less. Obviously, there might be some little variables that change, but, to build the range up around that, and then essentially beyond that, it's working on a cool-looking Space Marine army, because I've needed and wanted to do a cool-looking Space Marine army for years, and I just never seem to quite get it done, even though I've got some Blood Angels and some Crimson Fists and whatever. It just never comes together right. And just focus on other things. I think, just try and get the terrain done, and, look at how we make this better as well. It's all part of the projects involved in the hobby. So, yeah, that's that.
Is it worth giving a shout out to what we know Joe and Tim and others like Richard are also working on?
I don't know, actually. It feels weird because I don't know exclusively what Joe's working on. Or I know Joe's working on Deathwatch. I know
Deathwatch.
Richie's working on... Richie's not working on anything. Richie's going to be doing... something else, isn't he? I don't even know what Rich is going to do when he comes back. He's just, finding his feet initially, so who knows? Paying you to build and paint more things, I guess, much like how I do with Joe. And obviously Tim's working on Elder, which is super cool.
But did you tell Tim to go for Elder, or did he sort of go, I want to do Elder, can you help?
Yeah, no, I wrote his army list for him. I was like, we want something that's competitive but not broken. Okay. There you go. So he's running...
Did you charge him $40 for it?
No, I didn't charge him any amount of money for it. I simply did it for him because he's my friend and he wanted to understand. And the thing is, as well, I tried to build it on the basic premise that it was still fluffy to what he was trying to achieve, because what he's interested in is an Ulfway army. And I'm like, right, okay, cool. Well, Ulfway, in the narrative, they rely more on their Guardians, so the Guardians are much more militant within the ranks of the Ulfway. So basically, I've said to him, like, what you want is you want 3 units of Guardian Defenders with weapons platforms, and you want Aldred Ulfran, a couple Warlocks, it's War Walkers, Fire Prisms. I've told him to put a Hemlock in because, as people who listen to this podcast know, I do love a Hemlock. But yeah, it's that sort of thing where I've been like, yeah, this will build something that is of the fluff. But
Is he
going
to paint them up in the black? Is it Black Guardian Ulfway detachment that came with the Gathering Storm 2?
Gathering Storm 2, yeah. Well, yeah. So those, So it's the Black Guardian stuff, but the thing is the Black Guardian. It depends on what he wants to sort of add to it. So like the Black Guardians in the Gathering Storm used had like a blue sash for some reason. Like they added blue to the color scheme, which I never entirely understood. But yeah, the Black Guardians are from that detachment. But the Black Guardians go way back from there. They were first introduced in the 3rd edition Craftworld book that they did for a supplement for the Elder back in 3rd edition that gave them access to this Craftworld supplement. So they got the addition of Black Guardians in Ulfway. So that it's been part of the Ulfway lore for 40k for years and years and years and years. Just like how.
Oh, maybe. Didn't know.
Yeah, just like how Iandan are the Ghost Warriors, so Iandan have more Wraith constructs than anybody. Samhan are the Wild Riders, so they're more associated to riding jet bikes and, having more of a kind of... I suppose they're more like the... what's the name of the horse people from Game of Thrones? The Dothraki. There you go.
Dothraki, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, they're more like the Dothraki in that sense. And then the Eleltok are, more about rangers. They're more about going out into the world, more like the Pathfinders, and they go out there. And, they're more about rangers and that side of things. I can't remember what the deal is with some of the other ones. Yeah, Iandan the Ghost Warriors. Sam has the Jetbike guys. Oh, and then Beltan has more, or did have more aspect temples than any other... Craftworld. So the idea is Baltan is the sword wind, so they're more about Dire Avengers, Striking Scorpions, all the different aspects.
But is Ulfway a colour scheme black then, or was that a sort of specific thing for this sort of Black Guardians?
No, Ulfway have always had a black colour scheme. So it used to be, in the olden days, they had black and yellow, so they used to be black bodies with yellow helmets. But during 3rd or even 4th edition, probably 3rd edition, they updated them to have a bone colour scheme. So it was black and bone, which makes sense because actually, even back in the original version, you had these guys with the black and yellow helmets, but then the guys at Games Workshop had painted the Elder Dreadnoughts with the bone and black colour scheme, which became the sort of norm for Ulfway going forwards. But yeah, it was sort of a weird mix of references there for a while. But yeah, I mean, long story short, Ulfway have always been black. So yeah, I don't think it symbolises anything in terms of like a desperate struggle or whatever it means. It's just the colour they happen to be.
Okay, no, I didn't know if the sort of Black Guardians was like a specific sort of almost like a sub-faction within Ulfway, so therefore coloured their armour black in a symbolism to differentiate themselves from the rest of the craft world.
Not that I'm aware of, but again, I'm fairly up on the lore on the Elder stuff, but that might be something that's escaped my attention. But yeah, so that's that. So I know Tim's working on that stuff, which is cool. But yeah, so I wrote his army list for him. I can't remember what I sent over to him. I can probably pull it up on the old chat window just quickly. What did I send to Tim? Tim. Here it is. So the army list I gave him is as follows, and I'm not saying this is super powerful, but it fits his needs. Battalions attachment, which is Altark for 77 points, because Altarks are good. Made it the Warlord, so it regens stuff. And then a Warlock. So a Warlock with a spear, because, whatever. Then it's three units of Guardian Defenders, each one with a heavy weapons platform with a scatter laser, because they're cheap, and to be honest with you, you use it more for the wounds than you use it for the shooting, but you can have it to, suit your needs. A unit of Wind Rider jet bikes, because I do love a Wind Rider jet bikes, and I've told him to take them with shuriken cannons, because the idea is if he takes them with shuriken cannons, they can advance and still shoot, because of battle focus and all that sort of stuff, so that's cool. Then there's a Hemlock. Then he's got dedicated transports, so 3 wave serpents. Each one is armed with shuriken cannons and vectored engines. Yeah, vectored engines, which is if you advance, -1 to hit. Then spearhead attachment, which is Aldred Ulfran, Dark Reaper squad, Fire Prism, and that's his entire army that I gave him as a list.
So just as I escape playing against you with your Elder because you move on to something else, I still have to play Tim with his similar-ish Elder list.
Yeah, that Elder list is solid in terms of performance, and it's not difficult enough to understand what's good about it early doors. And I think that's the important thing. Rather than starting to add lots of weird additional nuance, you understand that the Fire Prisms stay at the back, you understand that the Wave Serpents want to go up to the midfield, you understand that the Guardians need to get within short range, and you know that the Hemlock's going to fly around and be bothersome. So you know within all these different elements where things reside, and it's active in all phases, and it's got good firepower, it's got good flexibility. It's not going to be especially strong against certain types of list, but it's middle of the road Elder in that sense. So it's all right. It's all right. It's it's what he asked for. He didn't want to go too ridiculous early doors.
No, that's fair enough.
Which I understand. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you're working out an army, it's better actually that you play one that has a few not built-in flaws, but has a few more, less potent elements to it, because actually you get to start to I've learned more about playing Elder from losing with Elder over the years than I've learned from winning with them. Winning with them is doesn't teach you very much, other than that you can win with them consistently and relatively easily in certain instances. The lessons that I've learned have always come from the losses more so than the wins. So I think, when you're feeling out an army, I think it's better to take a mixture of things and play it and learn it, rather than go, what's the best army in the world right now? Right, cool, I'm going to just do that exactly. Why aren't I winning? It's like, maybe it's better to, I think really you need to spend like 6 to 8 months with an army, consistently getting better at understanding it and learning its nuances before you then start trying to play it super competitively. Obviously play it at events and see how you get on, but don't expect to win with it out of the gate. Unless you're an incredibly exceptional player, which you can be, obviously, but I think, once you've got to a certain level of experience, you sort of start to get things fundamentally. But I think someone like Tim, who isn't super into the gaming aspect of things, who's trying to find his feet with Elder, I felt like that was a good mix of stuff that would give him a flavour of everything. And then if he's like, Fire Prisms aren't really doing what I want them to do, I'll take those out and I'll put more Dark Reapers in, or I'll take those out and I'll put more Hemlocks in, or I'll take those out and I'll put more Jet Bikes in. He's got that flex within that army, I think. So there you go, that's a lot of talk about nothing really, isn't it? Probably about time to wrap it up, I'd say.
I would agree with you. That
Absolutely.
sounds good.
There you go. So, that has been episode 13 of the Lookout Sir 40k podcast. Thank you, everyone, as always, for listening to what we have to say. I appreciate this one's been a bit of a strange anomaly, what with not having Joe here, but I think we carried it well, don't you, Phil?
I hope so. But we'll let the listeners decide. Let us know what you think without Joe.
Absolutely. Your votes count. We may well never have him back ever again. Although that's obviously not true, for all the reasons we stated in the first instance. Joe's the glue. We're nothing without our glue. That isn't
That's
implying
true.
that we're sniffing glue or anything, right?
No.
No, okay, fine. We're in the clear. But yeah, no, genuinely, guys, thank you very much for checking out episode 13 of Lookout Sir 40k podcast. As always, it's hugely appreciated to see and hear all the support within the community that we're building around us, and obviously, seeing you guys responding positively to what we're doing. So really appreciate that. If you'd like to check out any of our previous episodes, obviously the places where those are available, so I'm not going to overly sell that to you, but ultimately if you're in the destination where you're listening to this stuff, click one of the corresponding buttons and that'll take you to more of it. And then I think without any further ado, we should probably hand over to Joe for his final thoughts on this episode 13. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye-bye. Bye now.
And that is the end of this week's podcast. And as we all endeavour, we must live by these immortal words from the great film known as Galaxy Quest. Never give up. Never surrender. And that's it.